one of the main things I would like to impress on people my age or close to my age is, don't give up on something. You're never too old to start something new. Like you never age out of trying new things. You never age out of turning your path a different direction.
Well, hello everybody. This is Rodney Veal. I'm the host of Rodney Veal's Inspired By, and today I have probably one of the funniest ladies I've come to know. We've met walking into this podcast, but Lori Graves is a comedian, radio host, writer, all-around community activist, doing all sorts of cool things. She's a funny, cool lady. And that's how I'm going to describe
Rodney.
you.
I appreciate that. I love that. I'm going to need you to write my obituary. That's great. It sounds great. Sounds great. Yeah.
I got your back on this
Thank
one.
you. Appreciate it.
I will make sure you are propped and elevated. I will give you your flowers. Okay.
Good. Yeah.
So, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thanks for having me. Thank you.
Absolutely. This is one of those podcasts where I just kind of, not like a this is your life sort of thing, but it kind of sort of is, because I'm kind of curious. No one ever on the playground goes, I'm going to be a comedian when I grow up. So I'm just kind of curious. What was your ambition when you were a child to lead to this?
I was an only child, so therefore I was responsible for entertaining myself. And my mom tells me stories now. I used to line up all of my dolls on my bed and I would interview them. And I had what I called a talk-in-tesion. Because I didn't know it was called a microphone, but I knew people held this thing that looked like this, and they talked into it on television. So I called it my talk-in-tesion, and it was actually about 6 inches of a broken off. Remember those little popcorn things you'd push when you were little? Had the red ball in the end?
Yeah.
That was my talk-in-tesion. It was like broke off, and I would hold that like a microphone, because it looked like a microphone. And she said, you would interview your dolls. I loved game shows on television when I was little. And I didn't really know what was going on, but I knew people were laughing. I knew there was somebody talking to them. And I think that was probably my earliest, maybe, entry into maybe thinking I wanted to do something with a microphone when I grew up. And I was a writer in high school. I went to college. I was a journalism major, and I kind of strayed off of that microphone thing for a while and went to pen and paper. And I was a bartender, and I was the bartender in town that everybody knew. I was the one that cracked on people. I said things I probably shouldn't have said. But I entertained my customers while they were in there.
Yeah.
And one night, some friends of mine that were in a band came in and said, hey, we're doing a show at the Majestic Theater, which is our theater in Chillicothe. It's 500-seat theater, 1853. It's the oldest continually operating theater in the country, actually. And they said, hey, we'd love for you to MC our show. It's us and another band, and maybe you could try some comedy. And I said, well, you guys are crazy. And one of them got real close to my face, and he said, Lori, you're 37 years old. If you don't do it now, you're never going to do it. And that is how I started comedy, on a dare, basically. And the first time I performed was in front of over 300 people at the Majestic Theater. I'd never done an open mic, nothing. I just went, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to give it a try. And when I was on stage, I know looking back now, my set was probably horrible, but it was probably awful. And I apologize to everyone who was there that night. But I remember going back in the dressing rooms, the theater that night, and that feeling I had, and I thought, man, I want to feel this again. I think I want to be a comic, and that's how it started. Just random, just one night at the bar, and just two people, the Lewis brothers, the band. Had it not been for them asking me to do that, I probably wouldn't be sitting here with you today.
I love that. That's how, it really is this kind of like, it's in you, but someone just said, cut up in your face and said,
it was more of a dare.
Man.
I remember we did a shot of Jameson to seal the deal. That's how we did it. So, yeah. And,
so that's how careers start.
Yeah, that was it.
That was it. Jameson. I should have used that to get my job here.
You can ask any other comic. That is usually not your first time on the microphone. Usually it's at an open mic at a bar somewhere with maybe 8 to 10 people in there. But I chose a theater with 300 people. That was
it was that's like a trial by fire. It's like
it really was.
They shoved you. Basically, they shoved you on and said, go.
They did. And I did 7 minutes my first time on the mic, which is also unheard of. And then I came back during intermission and did like another 7 to 9 minutes. And I still have my notebook from that night. And I looked through it because after my second set, I went down to the dressing room and I wrote, "I did it," in about 3-inch letters on my notebook, and I still have that. And occasionally I'll look at it and it's been 15 years now, and here you still are. So, yeah.
Oh my gosh. So what was the response? I mean, I know the responses my parents gave to me about wanting to be an artist. I mean, they could understand the visual art, but dance, ballet, that was just like,
Yes,
okay.
yes.
It wasn't even a ha, it was a shock.
Right.
What are you? So, what did you do? Like, did you go to mom's like, "Hey, mom, I'm going to be a comic. I'm at 37."
She was there that night, obviously, and my father had passed away in 2001. So this was 2009 that I did this, and my mom, she said, "Oh, good job," being the supportive parent.
That's nice.
And I said, "Mom, I think I want to keep doing this," and she said, "You can't be a comic." And I looked at her and I said, "Well, why?" I said, "Why can't I do this?" And she said, "Lori, do you know how many thousands of people are trying to do this?" She said, "We live in a small town. How are you going to do this?" And I said, "Well, I'm Lori Graves. I'll figure it out." And that's pretty much. And from that point forward, I did it just basically to defy the people around me in my small town, which were few. I have a huge support system.
Okay.
But there were some people who were close to me that said, "You can't do this. What are you thinking?" And, those first few years, I think I kept going even through the obstacles out of spite. Just, they said I couldn't do this, so I'm going to show you. And that kind of, that just kind of kept propelling me forward. As in the back of my mind, I've always thought there were people who thought you couldn't do this. So you keep going.
You just keep going.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's not inspiration enough, I mean, at a certain point, I mean, I love the fact you said, "I'll show them."
Yeah.
I mean, that's basically, I think every artist I've interviewed, if there was someone was a naysayer, they all said the same thing.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter what field, they're like, "Well, I'll show them." I'm like, wow.
Yeah, I don't think
powerful
I don't think the negative people in your life when you're starting to do something new, I don't think they realize they're actually they're fueling your fire, and they're making you, want to prove them wrong. And then after you prove them wrong, then you get to be smug about it. But and then I did it. But I've talked to other people too that I went through the same thing. Some of my friends said, "You can't do this," and I'm like, "Well, here you are." So.
That blows my mind that people. It's almost like, well, how do you know that I can't do this thing or it's not going to be successful? I mean, I'm like, what magic beans or a magic 8-ball do you possess to go like shake and go? Lori's not going to be a comedian.
Yeah, well, I wasn't raised like that. Like a father, like I was the daughter, only child of my dad. I was a daddy's girl, and I know growing up, my dad never discouraged me from doing anything. If I had some crazy idea, like I could have told him I wanted to go to the moon, and he would have said, "Well, you need a plan. Sit down and figure it out. How are you going to get there?" He never told me no. It was always figure out. You need a plan. How are you going to get there? So based on that, and just everything else, and I thought, I'm from a small town, but that doesn't mean you can't do big things.
I was like, so you've done the first one. You got the big "I did it" in 3-inch letters.
Yeah.
What was the next step? Well, so that people are saying, you should do. But how do you then take the next leap? Because that's different.
Being in Chillicothe, we're not Dayton, Columbus, or Cincinnati. We had no comedy scene. There was no comedy club. Closest one to me was here. It was at Wiley's, an hour and 10 minutes away. And I knew I needed to get stage time. And I did work at a bar, so I approached my boss and I said, "Hey," he goes, "Hey, how'd that comedy thing go?" I said, "Well, I think I want to keep doing it." And he was an older guy, and he said, "Well, kid, what are we going to do to make this happen?" And I said, "I think I need to start an open mic." And I had never been to a comedy club. I had no idea what I was doing. And I looked it up, how do you do an open mic? And I knew, this is how little I knew about it. I did this open mic for a year, once a month at the bar.
Okay.
I hosted and closed every mic because I didn't know any better. And I thought, well, I need a DJ because on TV, they have walkout music on comedy shows. So I had a DJ. Every open micer had a walkout song at my open mic. I had a spotlight and a PA system, and I just did it. And then after doing that for a year, a friend of mine lives here in Dayton. His name is Tim Spores. He was in a band called Skillless Villains. And I followed his band a lot. He hit me up one day and he said, "Hey, there's an amateur comedy contest at the Funny Bone. I think you should enter that." And a week before, it hit me that I had never been to a comedy club. And luckily, I knew Heather at Wiley's at the time, bartender. And so I got a hold of her and she said, "Jack and Joanne said you can have 5 minutes this Sunday." And so I rolled up into Wiley's. It was a packed house, and I did my 5 minutes. And then I went on the next week to the Dayton Funny Bone, and I won that month. I won that night. And then I got to go back in the finals at the end, and I got beat. I got second place. I got beat by one joke. A guy had one joke that beat me. Kenny Carpenter is the one beat me. He went one joke, and but he was great, And then I started meeting Dayton comics. And then they started saying, hey, would you like to be on my show? And I'm like, yeah. And for the first probably 3 or 4 years of my comedy career, everyone thought I was a Dayton comic because I only did shows in Dayton. I only hung out with Dayton comics. And kudos to Dayton, that they welcomed me with open arms.
Wow.
I would travel and people would say, "Oh, you're Lori Graves. You're from Dayton," and I would say, "Yeah," because I mean,
well, I correct him.
Well, nobody knew Chillicothe, but everybody knew Dayton, and they knew they had a strong comedy scene here, and so my roots in my comedy are Dayton. So that's why.
Oh, that is pretty.
That's why when Mike asked me to come up here and do this, I'm like, heck yeah, home. I'll come. Yeah, why not? So
well, absolutely. No. I mean, I'm just floored to the fact that you just kind of went. Let me base it upon. I've seen this on a TV show. They have walk-in music. Yeah. I mean, well, if they've done it this way, I mean, I love that. I mean,
yeah, I had no idea what I was doing. I can fully admit that now. I had no clue. But most of my comedy career has been trial and error. I've really never had anybody show me the ropes, or it's been learn as I go. Which is why I love now. I teach a comedy class at Ohio University in Chillicothe, and I love to, like anybody wanting to start comedy, I like to give them the foundation and the bones that I didn't have. The things that I had to learn myself. And I try to give back to the younger comics now. Just that's kind of a thing I like to do.
I am just floored and flabbergasted. I just love the fact that, and I mean, no trepidation, no fear. I mean, I will gladly write your obit.
Thank you.
I will gladly do that because I'm like, oh, fearless woman. I love it. You just go in. I'm like, well.
I'm fortunate. I had an entire town that had my back through all this, and they still do.
Sounds like a special place.
It really is. Like, it's a great town. And if you're trying to do something, they rally around you. And they have me in comedy. They've supported me all these years. When I do shows there, they're very well attended. And it's just been a joy to watch Chillicothe grow in comedy along with me.
Right. And so, okay. So now you've done, you're in the door. You're building the plane as you go.
Yeah.
I mean, you're literally adding gasoline and fuel.
Exactly. That thing ran empty. I would just drip by drip everywhere I went. Yeah.
Keep adding. I keep going. So now, I mean, what were some of the lessons you got to learn along the way that surprised you, about comedy? Because I mean, some people say I want to be a comedian, and they're like obsessed. They read all the books, they watch all the videos, and I studied this video of my favorite comic.
And that's not, to me, and this is just my humble opinion, that is not how you learn to be a comic. How you learn to be a comic, I think, is being on stage in the moment and getting as much stage time as you can and learning to get a feel of what it's like to be in front of an audience and how to read the room. So many new comics, their biggest mistake, I feel, is they don't read the room. They have their set memorized. They get up there, they get the mic, they start going with their jokes, and they're like blinders with just what they've memorized, and they don't bother to look around and see, oh, these people are not responding to this, or this is not going well, or whatever,
right.
Or maybe I shouldn't do the abortion joke in front of a Catholic heavy room. I mean, there are just things you got to know where you are.
You are, and that's a skill that most people don't possess in real life anyway.
Yeah.
Read the room, bro. I mean,
right.
It's like, wow.
Any town I go to I've never been to before, I always look them up. And I always see, how do they make their money? And how did they vote? How did they make their money? What's their income? What do they do, just to get a feel of, how I can do my jokes I already have and maybe cater them more to that, read the room to that crowd.
To that room, because people have a natural propensity to laugh at things, and because it's a human connection. And I love on your website, it describes you as a trollop and a sinner.
Yes.
But a natural storyteller. I just think I fell in love with you at that point. I was like,
that is a quote from my friend Heath
trollop and a
Deal.
sinner. I'm like,
I went to high school with him. He's an author. He's a professor at Bowling Green, and he wrote that for me in the beginning of my comedy run when I was bartending. And I was like, I think Unrepentant Sinner, Chain Smoker, whatever,
Yeah,
So,
you're a chain smoker. Yeah.
yeah, he wrote that for me, so I put that in. Even though I don't smoke now, I still think it's hilarious. And but yeah, he inspired me a lot too, as far as the writing aspect of comedy. I would run things by him because he is a published author. He's an English professor, and that's his thing. And I would say, hey, I don't like how this sound okay. I'm trying to word this in a certain way, and I've bounced things off of a lot of my friends like that. Just, hey, what do you think about this? I've got a little text group, and I'll like throw stuff in, like, what do you guys think? Yeah. And if it's silence, I'll be like, okay, back to the drawing board.
Well, it's really interesting because we interviewed Jesse Nutt.
I love Jesse Nutt.
I love Jesse.
Jesse Nutt's a hero of mine.
And also what I've noticed is, and I'm interviewing people from all the arts. I mean, I consider comedy an art.
Thank you. I do too,
refuse it. Like, no. Yeah, you're funny, but you're not talented.
I love you, Rodney. I love you.
I mean, I'm real. I'm turning 60, so my thing is that the filters are completely off.
I love that.
I'm like, really? No. I taught dance, and I would tell my students, not everyone can be Beyonce.
Right.
And we're moving on.
Yeah. And next. Yeah.
And next. But what I've noticed is that everyone believes in writing. Writing is a key component of visual art making, dancing, music, video. It doesn't matter. Writing.
Yes.
Language. I mean, I want to say so badly. People.
Yes. And
it matters.
Yeah, words matter, especially when that's all you have on stage with you are your words and a microphone. We don't have an instrument. We don't have background music. It's just us and our words. And the writing really comes into play. There's a trend in comedy with the crowd work.
I've noticed that.
Yeah.
Okay, explain. Finish your thought, but
it has its place, and I do. But I am more of an old school comic. As Jesse, I believe in you should have a set. You should have prepared jokes that you've worked on. That you land, hit. You're gonna make people laugh. And a lot of the newer comics. Now, I'm not trying to bash newer comics, so they don't know any better. But they just think they can get up there and quote wing it. And that terrifies me. Even as a comic of 15 years, that terrifies me to not have a plan when I get on stage. Like, how could you not have a plan? And the crowd work thing, it was made popular. A lot of the younger comics are doing it. And some of them do it very well. But a lot of them don't. And that's where the problem is. You just can't, not everybody wants to hear what the guy in the second row does for a living and how long he's been married. People paid money for a ticket. They want to hear jokes. They don't want you to interview the crowd.
Right.
But there is a way. I do give crowd work props to those people who do it right and do it well. I know comics that do it well, and
kudos to you.
And kudos to them, yes.
Absolutely. And that goes into the other part of it. You get to a certain age and you get in life, and it's like, yeah, that was great. However,
yes,
if it's not working, it doesn't work.
Right.
I mean, and it's not a personal thing. I mean, I think sometimes when people, this is constructive criticism and feedback. It's not like we're saying anything that's
right. No,
negative.
absolutely. Yeah.
But I've noticed that a lot of younger artists, just don't have a thick enough skin to take constructive criticism.
No.
It's like,
no.
What? Like, who trained you? Like, what school did you go to?
Yes.
It's like, really?
Yeah.
We're going to cry about dance is hard. I'm like, I'm asking you for things for my knees. At this point, it's a hard, comedy's hard.
It is. Any craft that you do like that in entertainment, it's hard. And, it's just like even with any 9-to-5 job, you have a boss, you're going to get criticism and something. And you can either use that to improve yourself, or you can carry that with you like a burden and get upset about it.
Right.
And I've had people tell me, I didn't like that. My mom is the biggest one. She'll be the first one to tell me. We get in the car after a show and she'll say, they didn't like that joke, Lori. I'm like, well, I heard and, noted. But Karen Jaffe, my friend, and I, Karen's got a phrase called stage deaf. and people who tell jokes and they think they hear laughter, but it's not there. But in their mind, when they got off the stage, they killed. But like, well, you have one laugh in 10 minutes. But hey, whatever kudos to you. However you're counting it, go ahead. If you think you did great, you did great.
Wow.
But and I do think there is that too, that some people just in their mind, and I love it. I love the confidence. I love
God bless them. God bless them for that kind of confidence.
But I'm old school, and I not only say being 53, but just being comedy over a decade and talking to a lot of the Jesse Nuts of the comedy world, the Jeff Jennas. These are local people that have been in for decades. They will tell you, that joke wasn't good. You need to, let's go back to the drawing board. There was good parts of it, but hey, I think maybe you should tweak this or that. And even after a decade and a half into comedy, I welcome those comments from them because I want to be the best I can be.
Absolutely.
And they know the deal. Sometimes comics will give you unsolicited advice.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
and that's always fun. I usually just smile. Yeah.
I was like,
yeah.
Oh, bless your heart.
You ever do that with dance? Anybody?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Hey, Rodney, you should. Yeah.
It's like, man, I saw you stumble out of that pirouette. I'm like, well, yeah.
Well, but I've done that 5,000 times. So yeah.
Yeah, it's like, and the curtain went down and they applauded and I moved on.
Exactly. Yes. But thank you for hanging on to that half a second mistake I had.
Yeah.
Thank
you.
Yeah.
The ballet lasted for 2 hours, but you want to tell me I made that stumble?
Right. Yeah. It's nice to hear that dance and comedy are really no different.
I'm Bonnie Miles, Membership Coordinator of CET. Thank you for listening to Rodney Veal's Inspired By. This podcast is a production of CET and ThinkTV, 2 local PBS stations. As PBS stations, the work we do online, on air, and in the community is supported by listeners like you. If you're enjoying the show and would like to support our work, please consider becoming a member at cetconnect.org or thinktv.org. Plus, when you sign up to donate at least $5 a month, you'll get access to special members-only streaming videos on the PBS app through Passport. Learn more at cetconnect.org or thinktv.org.
If you're enjoying this conversation, The Art Show, also hosted by Rodney Veal, is available to stream anytime from anywhere on YouTube or the PBS app.
It's bizarre. And you see things with art where the people have made something and you go, but your 12-page description on the wall doesn't match that lump that's in the middle of the floor.
Right. Yes.
It's like a moment where you're like, really? Like, am I being punked? I'm like, I know I'm not that smart enough.
Yeah.
But
yeah. I get
that doesn't work. There was a time, I went on a vacation. I was in this museum, a contemporary museum in St. Louis. I was standing like, wow, this is kind of minimalist. And this guard walks up to me and says, "Excuse me, sir, you're standing on the art." There was a crack thing in the floor.
I would have had no idea.
I was like, I am so sorry.
Yes.
And I went, you put a crack in the floor.
Right.
That's a piece of art. Okay.
Right, and you respect it, but you just don't understand it.
I didn't. At that point, I'm standing on the art, and then
I would have done the same thing.
And then I start laughing because I'm like, this is stupid.
Yeah.
And there's like, someone's gonna be, oh, how dare you? You should understand the fragility of buildings and their internal life. Like, no, it's a crack in the floor, and you should have put stanchions around it.
Right? How was I supposed to know that crack in the floor?
I was standing there with these size 12s.
I would have probably been standing right next to you at that moment. Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Thank God I didn't spill a drink on it. I mean, at that point. So we're talking about because this whole notion of comedy being an art is, what are some of the things that, because your observational skills as a comic, I think that's, and that was your friend who wrote it. I think it's like your storytelling. It's observations of daily life. Why you're not heightening what has occurred or you've observed? It's just telling it in a way that makes it funny, right? I mean, I'm kind of trying to understand observational humor and comedy. Like, how does that work? Because a lot of people have observations, and I'm like, but that's not funny.
Well, I spent the better part of 20 years in the service industry observing customers and observing them at their lowest and best moments. From restaurant to bar, I've always stood back, especially in bars. You've got to make sure you watch and is that guy getting ready to fight, or why is his chest puffy? There's just little things. And I've always been a talker. My mom said I was screaming when I came out, and the only time when I was younger that I didn't talk is when I was asleep, and I even talked in my sleep. But I've always liked to think of myself. I've been a great. I can describe things, maybe in a way. And stories come naturally to me because the good Lord blesses me with moments that I don't think he gives anyone else. And I like to turn those into jokes and make them funny, but also on stage with my storytelling. I had a lady a couple weeks ago tell me she liked me because I was so real. And I've always envisioned doing my set as coming on stage and the audience is my friend. And they're going to get in the car and take a ride with me. And then when I'm finished telling them my stories, I'll let them back out. So that's just kind of how I like to look at comedy. Is I like to, I just like to talk to people about everyday things, and I talk about myself more. I don't like to punch down on marginalized groups in my comedy. I don't do political humor. I don't do like topical things. I just like to talk about things that I think will make people laugh, that I find humorous.
Right.
So I try to retell that in a way that, not only maybe you might get like a little bit of maybe a message across, but also make them laugh at the same time and make them feel like, oh, we just hung out with Lori, and really I was working and they were sitting there, but I like people to think they just, they came to a show and they hung out with me for an hour. So
I love that because, and that's what storytelling is. It's all storytelling.
yes.
I mean, even music, it's like you can be on a journey. It's like, but the audience has to be open to it. And so one of the things I'm kind of curious about, what would you tell an audience in preparing to go to see comedy? Give them some advice, because I think some audience members don't quite understand what comedy etiquette 101. I mean,
Well, fortunately in Chillicothe over the years, I have trained my people, and that's the only way I can say it. And they laugh when I say that, but they know to come in, sit down, turn their phones off. Don't be loud. And I think any well-run show, the host should address these things up front and remind people, hey, we're about to start the show. Please turn your cell phones off or on, mute or vibrate. And I always say, keep your table talk to a minimum. That means don't talk. Don't record the show. This is the intellectual property of the person on the microphone.
Yeah, right.
And what we really need you to do is sit back, laugh, have a good time, and join us for some laughs. And I think it's just common decency. Just the normal daily etiquette, I think, applies at a comedy show. You don't go out to a restaurant and start screaming. You don't
Right,
really
well,
hey,
well.
you sit there and, we were supposed to anyway.
We're supposed not to, but
The way I was raised, you sit there, but I think it's the job of the host, and a lot of people don't understand the host of a show is really, as important, if not, more important than the headliner, because that's the person driving the show.
Really kind of
They're the one. They set the tone. They get the audience calm down. They give them the rules, and they're the ones that it's their job to start that show out on the right foot, and that's how I started doing a lot of things actually here in Dayton. I was a host. Anybody like, Lori, you want to host my show? Absolutely. I would jump on those host jobs because it got my foot in the door with clubs and stuff for one, but two, I did a good job. I knew what I was supposed to do, and I got the show off and running so the other people on the show could enjoy themselves and
do what they do.
And I always encourage new comics. I'm like, if anybody asks you to host a show, that is a skill set that not everyone has.
Right.
And if you're going to host a show, that's an important part of that show. And there are things that you need to know to be able to do that, because that job is very important. And some comics are insulted when they get asked to host a show. Really? Where I think, for a newer comic, that's one of the biggest things somebody could offer you, is give you control of their show, because that's basically what you're doing as a host.
I can't believe someone would be offended. I mean, is it because I want to be immediately the headliner?
Everyone wants to be the headliner, but Jonathan Craig told me a long time ago when we were talking about it, when I finally got to the point where I could be the feature, which is the one right before the headliner, and we were talking one night, and he's like, headlining isn't all it's cracked up to be. Be careful what you wish for. And I think of that often when he said that to me.
That's great advice for anything. Life.
Because the headliner, you have to go up there and perform no matter how horrible the show was before you, if it is. Hopefully it's great, but it isn't always.
No, always.
And you have to clean up the mess that everybody else left before you on stage.
Oh my God!
So I mean,
where, the audience has revolted. Everybody.
Sometimes by the time you get on the mic, people are sitting with their arms crossed, like. we hate this show and everything about it. And then you've got to go up there and do 45 minutes in front of these people. And you've got about 30 seconds to win them over so you can have a good set. And, so the headliner, what you really want to be is you want to be the feature. Because there's no pressure on the feature. Because the host opens, the headliner closes, the feature, you're just like, you're the filling in the sandwich there. You just got to get up there and do your stuff, And
Right.
the headliner's going to come clean up after you. And hopefully, you're a little more experienced than the host. So you can, your good jokes go off well. But, the hierarchy of a show, I truly think that every new comic should learn how to be a host. It's very important and it's very skill building for them to do that.
Oh, my God. That is such great advice. Well, that's, I'm going to, that model to me sounds like the model that should happen in other things as well.
It is.
Like
yeah.
sometimes you don't need to be the headliner. I mean, the host is not a bad thing. Or the second fiddle. I mean,
Yeah.
I love those roles.
Yeah, hosting isn't a bad gig. And I think as a new comic, you should welcome those offers and, and get good at it. And that's how you get your chops ready to be the feature and the headliner. It teaches you crowd work, teaches you skill on how to deal with a crowd. Is being that host. You got to get up. You're running the show. It's all on you.
All on you. So
you open the door to the show. You're the one they see first. Yeah.
the water's fine.
Yeah.
And so my question is, like, for comedy in Ohio, a lot of people don't realize there's a lot of opportunities to see comedy in Ohio.
Oh, there's so much comedy in the state of
know, which is-
Ohio. And
blows
so
my
many
mind.
and
It
so
blows
many
my mind.
good comics that people have never heard of that they should have. There are some fantastic comics, I mean, from Cleveland on down, that unfortunately they don't get the stage time they should. A lot of it's, politics, a comedy, it's all, but they don't get booked as they should. And I love finding those people, and I love bringing them to Chillicothe to do my shows, because I love to bring a variety of comics to my audiences in Chillicothe. I like to showcase people that maybe might not get showcased anywhere else, and not to play the card, but maybe again marginalized groups or women and things that maybe they don't get the stage time in the clubs or the big venues that they should, but they're still just equally as funny and they deserve the stage time.
Talent, and they have talent and skill.
Yes.
And I love the fact that you approach it that way, because I feel a lot of people don't. It was a fact that someone kind of pointed out to me that Ohio is the 7th populous state in the country.
It is. I think I read something one time. Columbus, Ohio is 500 and some miles away from most of the major cities in the United States.
Yes.
And that to me is, when I heard that was kind of mind boggling. Like, wow, it is. And just Columbus itself is such a huge, test market city, and just there's all kinds of stuff up there. Yeah.
And so when I hear people say, "Oh, this doesn't happen," I'm like, no, I'm on this job, and I've been at this for like hosting the Arch over 10 years.
Yes.
And now doing the podcast and as well. I'm like, please, there's tons. I'm trying to fit it in. I'm like, I want to go. I'm like, I was telling Mike, I'm like, I even did a pitch for Mike, our producer, to Dana Wiley at the Dana Wiley Gallery yesterday. She's on board, by the way, FYI. So it's like that kind of thing where get comedy in other places, get it out there, because we need it. We need to laugh a little bit.
I love taking comedy to places that have never had comedy. When I started producing shows, that is one of the things that I had the chance to do, because again, Chillicothe, no comedy there.
I know, like what,
until I built it.
People's mind.
And my favorite thing to do is to find a small town with like an AmVets or a Legion or a Moose or something, and they've never had comedy there.
That's the best.
And those are the shows that all 250 people that live there come out for that show, because they've never had the opportunity to have comedy in their town. And I don't think it takes away from any club attendance. I think actually satellite shows like that encourage people to go to comedy clubs.
They might try the next step
and
go
pay
to
that higher ticket price to see that name. But again, it all goes back to who's producing the show. You want to make sure you're giving these little small towns a quality show. I mean, you want to have a PA system that works. You want to have a spotlight. You want to have the room set up to where that show, it's conducive for laughter.
Okay.
And some, again, not hammer on new comics, but some of them, they get so gung-ho about, I want to start producing shows, but they don't even have a PA system. They don't have a spotlight. They go into this club, the fluorescent lights are still on.
Ooh,
that's not a club atmosphere. So if you're going to do shows, if you're going to do shows off club premise like that, you want to make sure you can get as close to a comedy club feel as possible.
Right.
And set it up to win and not to fail. And I feel if the show is well produced and well ran, those people in those small towns are going to start getting online, and they're going to be like, well, where's the closest Funny Bone to me, or where's the closest independent comedy club? Right. Hey, let's go there and check that out, because you've opened the door to comedy for them. And they may have never been to a live comedy show before, and then they might get that bug. Like, hey, I love going to live comedy shows. Let's see where else we can go. So you might do a show there once a quarter, twice a year, but that still is going to open that door for that audience member to fall in love with live comedy. And I love to do that. I love to take comedy where it's never been. That's one of my favorite things to do.
Oh, I really am right in your obit. I'm like, because I love your attitude about it. It's like, instead of it being some sort of like, treasury challenge, you're saying, all right, let's go.
Yeah, let's go. Let's do it.
Let's do it. And I'm like, I love that candy.
Yeah, because I love comedy. I think everyone deserves to laugh.
Yeah, and you gotta love what you do. I was talking to David Korean, Dr. David Korean, who runs the Dayton Box Society of Dayton, and he says, "Man, you gotta love this because we get paid pennies on the pennies, and you've gotta love it."
Yeah.
And I was like, I listened. I was like, you're absolutely right. And the lean days when when it's like when you're starting out as a comic or any sort of an artist, it's the lean.
My very first paying gig, it was an hour and a half from my house, and I made $25, and I was never so happy to get that $25. I felt like $1 million in my hand when I got it. I didn't even cover the gas and the drinks I had at the bar. But you know what? I got paid to do something I loved. And I knew it would get better. I just had to stick with it, so. Yeah. And again, and sometimes I'll take gigs that, really don't pay that well, whatever, but it might be for the cause. It might be a fundraiser. It might be something I believe in. Yeah. And I tried I had to cut it down because, I do need to pay the bills. So usually now I'll do maybe 1 or 2 free things a quarter. Just so I can still keep giving back, because you get asked to do it. The more you do it, the more you get asked to do free stuff. Right. But I like to work with a lot of nonprofits in my area. I work with them, and I'll MC stuff for free, or I'll do a show for free. Just because I'm getting ready to do a show. I talked about my show this morning, my radio station. I'm going to do a comedy show in May for a local cat rescue called Cats and Company in Chillicothe. This girl, at any given time, she has 50 to 100 cats. And she's out there, she's a realtor. She's got a regular job. But it's a struggle, and I'm doing something for a humane society this coming weekend. But I like to do, once you get to the point where you can, then the fun part now is being able to use comedy to help give back to my community. That's what I like to do too. I like to, just to get, they've supported me for so long. It's time to give back,
That is such a true.
It is. I think everyone should. Anything you're good at, you should at least do one thing a month or even one thing a quarter. Give back. Even if you lay concrete, do something. To give back to the people who've supported you. I think it's important in any job or any art that anyone does.
Oh man, we are kindred spirits, because I've adamantly believe that.
Yes.
And I've had people say, like, oh, why do you do these events and activities? Because it matters for the community.
It does.
It serves a purpose. I believe in service. I'm like,
yes.
I'm like, what are you, selfish?
I don't know if you're like me, like obviously, you've been dancing your whole life, and it was a gift that was given to you.
It was a gift. It was a gift. Trust me.
And when you get gifts, are you supposed to keep them wrapped up, or are you supposed to unwrap them and share them? That's.
Therein lies the rub. I have good fortune.
Yes.
I'm at PBS. I'm at the station.
Yes.
A lot of support and love. Why would I not try to figure out how to share all that with everyone and
Exactly.
bring them along. Come on, hey,
Yeah,
come on.
hey, or maybe you watch me do this. Maybe you could do this, and be an example to younger people and just anybody, especially at my age. I know your age. I didn't start comedy till I was 37. So I like to encourage people, like, hey, it's never too late to follow a dream. If you got, at least try it. I don't want to go to my grave like with regret that I didn't try something. And if had I not done comedy, that would have been a regret. I should have tried that.
Yeah.
And that's why I love teaching that little adult workshop I have at Ohio University Chillicothe. It's a 3-week course. We have a little show at the end, and I basically just teach people stage mechanics and how to write a 3 to 5 minute set. I mean, I don't teach them everything, but at least I give them the foundation. And a lot of them, it was a bucket list. Like, I've always wanted to try comedy, and I'm like, I'm so glad you did. And maybe they never do it again, but they can check that off of their list and. One thing's gone.
One thing's gone, and also that you don't know.
Yeah.
See, one of the things is when you took the dare to do it, you had no idea it would lead.
Oh, no clue.
In this pathway that
I
doing.
threw up off and on for 2 months. I was so terrified. I was a nervous wreck. That even going into that night, I was bartender back then, so I was a pretty big drinker. I don't drink anymore, but I think I sucked down probably 2 or 3 double Crown and Sevens before I hit that stage. Just to get that courage, that I thought I needed from, the alcohol to get out there. And then once I was up there, I was surprised at how comfortable I was. And it was weird, like even my knees were knocking. I wore a dress, so you couldn't see my knees. My knees were knocking. But the next day, I just looked back and reflected on how at home I felt. I just felt it was kind of almost a relief that I felt like home. I thought, oh my gosh, I found this, and I need to be doing this.
Right.
And that's how you felt with dance.
Absolutely.
That first time, you're like, wow, this is me.
Oh, this is me.
Yeah.
And I'm sure if there was a videotape of that, I looked like a hot mess.
Right.
I was like,
same thing with my set. My jokes were horrible that night, but
we got to start somewhere.
Right, but you, and I'm sure the same thing with you. You felt it. And that you're like, I felt this is what I need to be doing, and not everybody gets to feel that,
and they don't, and that's
wherein comes the gift and the blessing. Yeah,
and that's why, that's the underpinning of art. Mm-hmm. It is a gift and a blessing to be in the art of this, and the underlying of the art is it's living.
Yes,
it's just being alive and living, and you want to be in that energy. It's energy. It's like. It's a special place, and it's like, and we all need to laugh, and we're laughing here, but we're talking about very, very important things, and it matters. And I think that's why I love doing this podcast, because I want people to hear this and go, oh, well, maybe I'll try that.
Right? Yeah. Anything. Yeah. If you just want to be, you want to build Lego, you be the best Lego builder you can be. You go buy those Legos, you build that. You do that. But just anything, I think you just got to give it a try. There are so many people I know my age that wanted to do things and never tried, and I'm like, I just wish they would. And it is scary, it's terrifying,
Absolutely.
but I would rather be terrified than have the regret.
Right.
Yeah.
And my approach to being on this world was I was like a golden retriever when they said, hey, would you audition to be the host of the art show? And I went, oh, okay. Mm-hmm. And I did it. And I didn't realize I can read a teleprompter. I didn't realize that overly talkative kid.
Yes.
I was a
Me too.
motor mouth all the time.
Well,
Mom, what's this?
I guess our old neighbor used to call me like Jabberjaws or something. I don't know. He called me
Hot Rod. I was called Hot Rod.
Yeah.
Because I was running around going, what's this?
Yeah.
And so and now it's like my mind goes, oh, so this is what it was leading to.
Don't you think it's funny? And I don't want to call it a flaw, but something that, you did as a child that people were like, ugh. And now that's what you do for a living, And
Right.
Isn't it funny? I was like, oh, maybe that wasn't so bad that I was that talkative as a child, Look,
So maybe you had recognized it.
my career now,
And that's the thing. It's like we think like that we don't know what the career pathways are. And I think that's like, to that point, I think that's what stops most people, because other people tell them, well, you shouldn't do that. Because they don't know. Like, well, how can you tell me not to be an artist?
Yeah.
If you've never been an artist.
Yeah.
I love you, but
Right. And I never in my wildest dreams thought I would be doing comedy or that I would be a DJ on a radio station. I said I was a journalism major. Everybody wanted me to be a teacher. And then I quit college. In fact, I worked in the service industry for over 20 years. I was a restaurant manager. And I just felt like, people are like, oh, do you wish you would have started comedy earlier? And I always say no, because I think I needed those years building up to 37 to get those life experiences and get the understanding of people so that I could do this. Because I think had I started earlier, I wouldn't have met the vast amount of people that I've met. I wouldn't have had those life experiences. I wouldn't have had those trials and tribulations to make me like more understanding human and to be able to tell the stories. So for my case, I think starting later in life, that's what was meant to be.
Yeah, and that phrase "meant to be." I mean, it's like a lot of people want to leapfrog and jump over what I consider a process is really living.
Yeah.
I mean, I needed to live a little.
Yeah.
And I mean, and I did. And then that's when I became a dancer and an artist. And so it kind of led to that. And that's what it is.
Yeah. I just think we need to stop telling young people they have to have everything figured out by the time they're 22, because I didn't know what I wanted to be and when I grew up until I was 37,
God,
so
I know.
and I still, still made it, it's just,
we're still here. We're breathing.
we're still here,
And doing the thing we love. And
yeah.
so what you've given such words of wisdom and advice. And I mean, you are a storyteller. What advice would we give our audience, our last one thing that you maybe didn't cover? Because I think that these kind of podcasts, I think, serve a purpose.
Yeah, so. I agree. I don't know. Just I think the main thing is coming from someone. I'm 53. I think one of the main things I would like to impress upon people my age or close to my age is, don't give up on something. You're never too old to start something new. Like you never age out of trying new things. You never age out of turning your path a different direction. And don't be afraid of that, because you never know. I up to a month ago, I was working for my local county board of DD, and my job was terminated. They just did away with the position, and I thought I was going to retire from that job. And now here I am. I just started my new job this week. I'm the promotions director for Total Media, which owns the radio station I'm on. So, I mean, that just happened to me in the past week. You're never too old to go a different direction. Yeah. And what you think you're supposed to be doing may not be what you'll do forever. So just be open. Be open to new things.
And that is the ultimate mic drop.
Yes.
Thank you, Lori.
Thank you, Rodney.
This is a pleasure.
Thank you so much. I appreciated this today.